And good evening, everyone. Welcome to ESS, Empire State Sports and the Wise Guys Sports Talk Show. Your host tonight, Joey Ream, Dave Bartlett, myself, Pete Golson, our very special guest, very special. I got a funny feeling we're going to have a few laughs here, Rick Ahlfeld. Rick, welcome to the program.
Hey, seeing you three guys brings back memories. Most of them, Halloween's over, fortunately. So
I was going to say,
not going to be a horror show, right?
I was going to say, was it nightmares or was it memories? I don't know.
Well, we'll find out by the time we're done.
Oh.
Well, Rick, we created this show for really for people like you that are legendary figures in the North Country, especially in Section 10. We've had Kenny Kring on before, one of your fellow officials. We've had Brian Fairchild on, and we're looking forward to this one. And this show is all about you. You'd go ahead and tell us whatever you want to tell us, whatever you want to tell the listeners out there. I'm sure that we're going to get some big names dropped, and hopefully some names that maybe we can lead to another show for us later on down the road for somebody else that might want to do what you're about to do. So, okay. So Rick, why don't you start it off by letting people know how you got to where you are right now?
Well, I was born in 1944 in Jersey City, New Jersey, believe it or not. World War II, baby. My parents came back up to the North Country in 1948. My father was fortunate enough to get a job at Alcoa. We lived with my grandparents in Norwood for a couple of years. My grandfather, for the Norwood people, was a guy named Frank Lamanna, who was a shoemaker down there for a very long time. And he moved to Messina in 1950. And here's a name for you. We lived upstairs over John Arasian. Do you remember John Arasian, who did a lot of officiating? Mm-hmm. We lived upstairs over his parents' house when we moved to Messina. And went to the parochial school system in Messina and would have gone all the way through, except there was no high school, and ended up at Messina Central in the fall of 1958. And people don't realize it, but I did quite a bit of coaching before I really hit the officiating hard, starting with, believe it or not, 5th or 6th grade basketball. While I was a junior and senior in high school, Jerry Welsh, another legendary name, obviously, ran a grade school basketball program on Saturday mornings. So we had the public schools in it. So one day I was there and I said, well, how come Sacred Heart, St. Mary's, and St. Joe's aren't in that league? He says, well, okay, we'll let them in. So I took the Sacred Heart program for a couple of years, and I graduated. Then one time, I stopped up at the new Holy Family, which at that time only had a sophomore class. Father Bill Minch, maybe some people remember him. He asked me if I'd take over the 7th and 8th grade basketball program because they didn't have anybody. So I said, okay, I'll do that, because no money. Gave it to the church, right? And so I did that for 3 years. And then I coached the JVs there for 2 years. That took me up to 1967. And then I coached the varsity basketball team at Holy Family for 4 years, up until 71. And Joey, you've been a basketball coach long enough to know that I drove myself nuts enough that I said, I'll go down and take the freshmen where I can teach, which is what I wanted to do, teach the game. And so I did that for a year at Holy Family. And
hey, Rick, before you go any further, just curious, were you playing other Catholic schools? Was that your schedule at the varsity level for Holy Family, or were you able to play public schools as well?
Well, there was a Catholic league. Okay, so we're in the Catholic league, and to fill out our schedule, we played Colton, we played Parishville, several other schools to fill out. I think we could play 18 games at that time. Mm-hmm. So we had the Catholic league, the Catholic League had two divisions. Now, this was in the mid-60s. Everybody was still open. So the West, which is what we belong to, was Holy Family, St. Mary's. That was never fun. IHC, that was less fun. Augustinian Academy in Carthage. Who else did we have? We had Father Leo's in Croghan. That was one side. Oh, and Holy Ghost in Tupper Lake. There were 6 teams on that was the West. Then the East were the 3 Plattsburgh schools: OLVA, Our Lady of Victory, Mount Assumption, St. John's, St. Mary's of Champlain, St. Joseph's in Malone, and St. Pius in Saranac Lake. There were 12 Catholic high schools at that time in the mid 60s. Well, over a period of time, the league collapsed. There was nobody left, nobody to play. And we were fortunate enough to get into the Northern League. My last year, the 70-71, we got accepted into the Northern League. However, there's always a caveat. You could only be a member of the Northern League in 2 sports as an associate member. So our hockey team was in. They were playing. There was nobody else. They played hockey in the B division, and we were in baseball because basketball was all taken care of. Our baseball team played in the West, over with Governor and St. Mary's and OFA. So when the basketball program fell apart, no league, I applied as a member and was told, well, you can be a member, but you got to get out of one of the others. Well, I had to leave hockey in there because they weren't going to get any games. So I had to go tell Dave McLennan, who's a great friend of mine, but I said, Dave, you're not going to like this. I said, but I've got to drop the baseball team out of the West. They said they'd keep you in as a member, not as a member, but they'd schedule you. Your Holy Family was still going to be there, but the games wouldn't count in the league. So he wasn't too happy with me, but I said, what am I going to do? I got no place to go. So that's how Holy Family ended up in the Northern League in basketball. And then after I left, they eventually took Holy Family out of it, and they ended up playing over on the West with Edwards and Knox and in those schools. That's what happened until the school closed in June of 75. So that's what happened. Catholic League died. IHC, they finally let IHC in the Frontier League, and the Plattsburgh schools didn't bother them. They'd have to go to, of course, St. Joe's had closed, so they'd have to make that. They thought it was a long trip, 100 miles round trip from Malone to Plattsburgh. They should have taken some of the bus trips I took. So anyway, so then I did some football at Holy Family too, coaching. Coached the varsity line for 6 years, and the JV line for 1 year in 71. And I call myself the golf coach only in the fact that I drove the team to the matches. I didn't teach any golf. I had the 5 or 6 guys I had during this stretch could really play. Gilly Viskovich among them, who I'm sure you guys have heard of him for sure. Then I left Holy Family in the fall of 72 and went to Messina, got a social studies job there, and coached varsity soccer for 5 years from 72 to 75. Then I got out, and then I had to come back in 78. Doesn't matter why, but I came back for 1 year in 78 to fill in. And I also coached Frosh basketball for 4 years. And my coaching career was over. Mm-hmm. And then I started to get into the officiating end. You want me to go through that, or you got questions you want to ask me?
Go ahead, it's your show. Keep going. Keep
Okay.
going.
Well, let me see here. I'll make sure I got this right. Started refereeing basketball in the fall of 1964. I was a junior at Potsdam State. I was playing college soccer at the time. But in those days, if you got paid to officiate a sport, even though it wasn't a sport that you played, you were considered a professional because you were getting paid for your. So you couldn't play a sport and referee a sport. So at my junior year in the fall of 64, I wasn't going to play soccer anymore. In fact, I was going to start commuting the following year. So I went to my first meeting, got in the thing, blah, blah, blah. My first game, Joey, I don't know if any of you guys will remember this guy. The guy's name was Ray Williams. He was a legend. He was in the Joe Jakoski, Glenn Bissell, Dutch Purcell, those guys. I went up to Tupper Lake. It was Malone at Tupper Lake in December of 64. Joey St. Mary. That name ring a bell with anybody? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Joey St. Mary was the big stud for Malone. Played in the old gym in Tupper Lake, which was about 25 feet long and 13 feet wide. And, you guys remember the old gym at Tupper Lake where you could dribble the ball out of bounds? Do you
Yep.
remember that? You play in that gym? Peter, you did?
Yeah, I remember playing elementary ball up there. We played up there.
And had the bleachers on one side were about 10 feet from the sideline.
Yeah.
Right? You remember that?
Yeah.
And many a team lost a game at Tupper Lake because the kid dribbled down the floor and dribbled out of bounds. Referee blew the whistle. The kid's looking around. He's about 4 feet out of bounds. So anyway, that was my first game, December of 1964. And my last game was in December of 2020, just before I went to Florida. I did a game in Augsburg. So anyway, I did basketball for 57 years or what the heck it is here. I was fortunate enough, I did boys, girls, I did college, men's and women's all that time. Worked a couple of girls state tournaments, a couple of boys state tournaments, one boys federation and one girls federation tournament in basketball. Made lots of friends and lots of enemies. In fact, I'm in a store in Messina the other day talking to a guy. I come out, he's in his car, he looks at me, he says, "Did you used to referee?" I go, uh-oh. Who wants to know? You know, somebody going to shoot you in the back or what? So he says, "I thought so." He said, "My son played at Madrid Waddington." He says, "You were fair for the most part." I don't know if that meant he got all the calls or what. You know how that works. So anyway, so that was basketball. It started soccer in 1978 and worked until last year, the mini year, the end of Joey, remember they had that season in October. And
Yeah.
That was 40 some odd years. I did boys and girls, college, men's and women's, did a couple of state tournaments there. Softball. I got down here beer leagues. Okay. You've all you guys I know played beer league softball. I know you did.
Mhm.
That's an education. Anybody that wants to referee should umpire either beer league softball or beer league adult men's basketball. That's an education. If you can survive those, you've made it. In fact, I'll give you a quick little story here. Bob Billings, remember Reverend Billings?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there's a guy in Messina named Bob Morgan. Morgan and I, this is when the girls softball organization was just getting organized. And there was a playoff game up at the field in Colton Pierpont. No, it was Norwood Norfolk was playing Canton in a playoff game at Colton, neutral field. So Morgan and I have the game. Morgan never did the plate. He had a bad back. So we're going through the pregame and stuff, and we're shooting the breeze. And the Reverend Billings had never seen Bob Morgan, didn't know who he was. So he says to me, he goes, "Rick," he says, when Morgan, he says, "Who's that guy over there?" I said, "Well, that's my fellow official." You know, Morgan had his uniform on. He goes, "Can he umpire?" I said, "Well, if he couldn't umpire, he wouldn't be here." He said, "Oh." So I go over and I let Morgan know just before the pregame. I says, "The Rev is a little queasy about who you are being here." So we get all done with the flipping of the coin and the usual stuff you got to go through. And Morgie looks at the Rev. He says, "Rev," he says, "I want to let you know." He said, "I've umpired softball at Alcoa Field in Messina for the last 25 years. And if you can umpire at Alcoa Field, you can umpire anywhere." So the ref says, "Whoa, where'd you go?" Uh-oh,
Where?
We
We're
got
still
you.
here.
you disappeared. I can't see you guys.
No.
Well, we can see you.
Got you.
But I do.
Oh, we got you.
Okay, so you just want me to keep talking then. All right, no problem. That's all.
It'll be easier without having to look at us now.
Yeah.
Well, maybe me is even better. Anyway, so I started in beer league softball, I'll say in 1967 until this past summer. And that was mostly ASA and USA softball. Well, high school started getting organized in softball in 1974, and I did that up to and including this spring. Worked NCAA softball from 1990 to 2018. Did three national tournaments in NCAA softball. Finally, baseball. Started in 1978, worked through 2021, high school, college. And Joey, who can forget the Valley League, right?
Mhm.
Yes.
The Valley League, Brazier, Waddington, Hogansburg, Barney Rourke, and all his friends down in Hogansburg. Albert, Nicole, and I laugh an awful lot about that. Did a couple of state finals in baseball. And my most memorable thing in doing the state tournaments in baseball, I don't know if you guys can remember, but they used to play it, they played it in Utica, but they didn't have enough fields. So what they did was, of course, they played it all in one day. They played it on a Saturday. So you went to your meeting on Friday night, and then the 3 guys or the 6 guys, whatever it was, you got up in the morning and you rode over to Syracuse and went to the old MacArthur Stadium. You guys ever go there where the Chiefs played?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was, if you can remember it or not, but they had a big fire. And the grandstand got cut in half. The middle third of the grandstand burned. So for about 3 years down there, or 5 years, until they built a new stadium, there was a big wide gap in there. So I had the state final. I had the A final, the biggest one they had at the time, because they didn't have double A yet. I can't remember who the teams were. It doesn't matter. So I'm working the dish. And it's a 1-0 game. We're going into the bottom of the 5th. I can remember that. This kid walks 3 straight guys. Now I'm doing the dish. Kid walks 3 in a row. I'm behind the plate. Nobody said a word. I mean, nothing, because the kid, he couldn't find it. So the next guy comes up and hits a triple, drives in 3 runs. He walks 2 more. They still left him in. He walks 2 more guys. The next guy hits a double, drives in 3 more runs, 6 runs, 5 walks, 2 hits. And honest to God, nobody said anything, which, usually you're going to get a little grief from the team, but the kid couldn't find a plate. That was one of my big memories there. I also worked some Empire State games a couple of times in baseball, as I did in softball. And of course, the last sport's volleyball. Joe Javinville always called me a thief for doing volleyball. How can you take, Joe, how can you take money for doing that? It's easy, Joe. I just fill out the voucher and they send me a check. But I'm very serious when I say this about softball, especially the person on the ladder. Every time somebody touches the ball in volleyball, it's a judgment call. Every time, as to whether it's legal or not. That's where you start. So there's a lot of judgment in volleyball, and most people, especially the higher up you go, the harder they hit the ball. I don't know how the hell they can even see it. But anyway, that's a couple other things, and then you guys can get going here. I worked in the media for a while. I worked at 1050 YBG, had a sports show on in the mornings before I went to school. Then from 72 to 78 at YBG, broadcast Messina football and both Holy Family, Holy Family and Messina hockey games. But of course, YBG was only a daylight station. They had to sign off at sunset. So we would tape the games and play them back the next day. That's how we got them on the air. And I also, at the same time, for a while, was the sports editor of the Observer. Somebody left; they didn't have anybody, so I finally got fed up and went down and talked to the editor and said, "You got to do something about having sports in the paper because it used to be very good." So I did that. So I was coaching, officiating, teaching on the radio, and in the newspaper for probably a period of 5 years in the mid 70s. So one story, one morning, I'm getting up about 4:15 to go down to the Observer before I go to the radio station, before I have freshman basketball practice at 6:30, before I go to school.
Cool.
I'm sitting on the edge of the bed getting dressed, and my wife looks up and she says, "Are you coming or going?" Meaning, was I just getting home from officiating or was I going out? I says, "Well, I'm just going." Okay, boom. She went back to sleep. And that's it. That's all the stories I have. So go ahead, boys, fire away. I'm ready.
Holy crap. Well, that took up 25 minutes right there, Rick. So I think that's fantastic. Can you see us still at all, Rick, or no?
No, I don't know what the hell I did.
Okay. So I'm going to do something we never did. We rarely do. I don't think we've ever done it. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be right back with Rick Ahlfeld, and hopefully he fixes his computer. So we'll be right back, folks. And welcome back on ESS Empire State Sports and the Wise Guy Sports Talk Show. A little technical difficulty, but we're back here, folks, with our special guest, Rick Ahlfeld.
So Rick, I mean, you just got done with a whole bunch of names, stories, and all the things that you did. And the one that struck me first is not volleyball, but it is the fact that you did, you're doing high school and college and still finding the time or having the passion, or they were begging you to do beer league softball. And I bring that up because when I was 18, graduated in 1987, that was my summer job. And I don't know, I might have worked a game with you. I don't even remember now. I remember working with Brian Martin. I remember working with Huffer Gibo. I remember Mike Eggleston. But that was my summer job, doing town and tavern softball. And
Yep.
And then what was the other league? The Northway League? Is that what it was
Yeah,
called?
the Northway. The Northway was over toward Canton and Norfolk and Norwood.
Right.
Yeah.
So I did both those leagues, and then old timers on Friday night, making $12 a game on the young guys and $15 a game on old timers, because you work the old timers games yourself.
By yourself. Yep.
And I made over $1,000 that summer. It was a pretty good summer gig. I put up with a lot of aggravation because as an 18-year-old kid, I'm just ripe for the pickings.
You were fresh meat, Joey. You were fresh meat.
Damn right I was. Damn right I was. So guess how long I umped?
1 year.
One freaking year.
You never went back to any kind of officiating?
No, I never did. I mean, other than the occasional AAU tournament, they need a ref. I'll step in and do that. But I never did anything big time, never did anything official. I'm not saying that experience was the complete reason, but I mean, once I got into coaching, I just had more of a passion for that. Yeah. I do think though, that if I had a sport, even though basketball is my sport, baseball or softball would be the sport that I would like to be involved in. So what for you, was there a favorite? Was that which one was like, can't wait for this season because this is the sport I like, or were they all equal?
Well, two things. First of all, I'm going to use a line my son used to me when he was used with me when he was in high school. I asked him, "What's your favorite sport?" He said, "The one I'm playing that season," because he played soccer, basketball, and baseball. I think it's the one I was doing at the time. Probably the one that gave you the most satisfaction at the end of the contest was a tough boys basketball game with the crowd and the people and the coaches and people jumping up and down and everything else. And, the two of you get into of course, there's only two. You get into the coach's office after, usually it was about 150 degrees in the office, no beer. And And, you just look at each other and go, oh my God, how did we get out of this place alive? I worked a lot of games with Jimmy Myers Sr. And I'll tell you, we had some games that so I'd say boys basketball. Well, college men's basketball was obviously tougher than boys, but you didn't have the crowd. The crowd wasn't
Right.
there. Like they were, the crowds are there. The whole community shows up. You work in the old days in the little gyms on the west. When you went into Morristown, Hammond, Edwards, and Knox, and for a long time, Herman, of course, Herman's finally, have you seen the new Herman gym?
I
Have you-
I have not. They were just building it last time I was there.
I went over to watch a soccer game over there, so I went in and took a look. It is just beautiful. It's not quite as nice as Chateauguay. Nothing will ever be as nice as the Chateauguay gym again up here, I don't believe. But it is beautiful. But Herman DeKalb's gym was middle of the road. But those other ones, oh my God, those four little ones, these people bouncing off radiators and people sitting on the stage kicking you on the way by.
Now, Rick, you talk about going into the coach's office after the game and saying there's no beer there. See, now when I was playing, I could have swore you got into the beer before the games. That was just my opinion back then.
Not true. Maybe my eye wasn't straight, but it wasn't because of that. No. And
And I want to go back to the Alcoa League softball, and I played. I wasn't a great softball player. I never really played baseball except for Little League, but in that Alcoa League, that is where Rick Ahlfeld taught me the art of taking a pitch to right field. I was a dead pull hitter, and I was getting out one game. The pitcher knew how to pitch me, and I was trying to pull the ball.
Mhm.
And Rick Ahlfeld was behind the plate, and I made the third out, and he pulls me aside and he goes, "If you do this," and he told me showed me the technique and of taking the ball to right field.
Mhm.
I thought,
Made a 350 hitter out of you in one suggestion, right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
But that's what I mean about, refereeing and coaching. I mean, you're refereeing, but you're still taking the time to impart some wisdom on players. And I know you did that in basketball too, in high school basketball. I remember there were times when you had a moment just to, whisper something in a player's ear,
Mhm. Yeah,
and that's
I always felt that was part of the gig with high school kids, especially
always, and that's great.
trying to help, trying to teach them a little bit about what
Yeah.
was going on. Yeah, Alcoa Field, a lot of memories of Alcoa Field. Let me tell you, spent a lot of time over there umpiring, a lot of time. Fast pitch softball, good fast pitch softball was probably number two. College women's fast pitch softball, is fun because they play, and I'll say the same thing about college women's soccer. They play the game. You're dealing with estrogen, not testosterone, so they don't want to kill each other. They just want to play, and it's a pleasure. Both of those, a lot of fun. Basketball, then probably I would say good fast pitch softball. Not the stuff they're playing in at Town and Tavern League now when they just basically lay it in there and let them hit it. Somebody's going to get killed the way they can't windmill. I can see not windmilling in softball, but let's let them do everything but windmill, and then we'll find out who the hitters are. These guys all think they're hitters. They're not, because the ball comes in flat, just sits on a table.
Yeah.
Here, hit it. So
Not to mention the ball's like a rubber ball now. I mean, it's hard as a rock. I mean,
yeah, it's like a rock, and the bats are those aluminum bats. Holy Christ, they come off those things like you wouldn't believe. Let them hit wooden bats and the old softballs, and let them do everything but windmill. Then we'll find out who the hitters are,
There you go.
and the fielders will be able to make plays. I mean,
true.
you work out in the middle of the diamond, you're working the bases, and I tell you, I didn't get hit. I don't know how many times I should have got hit, but didn't. But the way those balls come off those bats, holy Christmas.
Well, it's funny you say that too, Rick, because one of the things, I mean, I don't go to a ton of old timers softball games or Town and Tavern, but they play right next door to me. So there'll be a lot of times I'm walking by the field and I'll look at the shortstop and I go, shortstop's like 5'4", 275. Why? There's no freaking way back in our day that guy's playing shortstop, but there's no time to react. The ball, you're either the ball is hit at you or just to your left or just to your right. You're not making a 3-step play now on ground balls in softball.
You can't.
And you're playing the outfield ring. Basically, most of those guys are playing the outfield ring, and they're not up even on the bases because that ball is hit so hot.
They're playing deep. Everybody's playing deep.
Yeah.
Some of those leagues now have gone, well, the old timers was always you couldn't bunt. The Town and Tavern the last couple of years is before the game starts, they'll say, are we going to not have bunting tonight? Yeah, okay, no bunting. So then the third baseman means he might be able to get out of there alive. Because remember, you had to come in to play against the bunt. Well, Jesus, you're 55 feet away, and the guy's hitting wailing it at you, and people get hit. And
tough to play even on the bag on that part.
No, you're not playing even on the bag.
No,
yeah. You want to bunt? Go ahead, but I'm not getting killed. Plus, the fields aren't exactly major league standards either.
No.
With the everything else.
You don't know what kind of hop you're gonna get.
Yeah, I got a couple of basketball stories here. As we're shooting the breeze here a little bit. Oh, Ronnie Johnson. Ronnie Johnson lived in Messina, and we reffed a lot together. Mm-hmm. We had a game one night at Hammond. It was Colton Pierpont at Hammond. Hammond was playing in the old gym in Hammond, literally 55 feet long and 30 feet wide. Okay. The over and back line was the opposite foul line extended across the floor.
Yeah.
Okay. That was the over and back line.
Mm-hmm.
So Eddie Woolston, who just passed away. Did you guys know that? Eddie passed right at the end of the summer. Eddie Woolston was coaching Colton Pierpont. And he had a guy named Kevin Weems. Does that name ring a bell with you guys at all? Probably not. And Hammond had a kid named David Hadlock, who was a heck of a player. They were coached by a guy by the name of Jimmy Watson. They both pressed, get this, they both pressed the whole game, 55 by 30. It wasn't too bad to officiate it because you didn't have to go too far down because they were coming right back at you. But the final score of the game was 125 to 110.
Jeez.
Okay, 125 to 110. That was the final. We got a foul. You look up at the scoreboard. We're in the fourth quarter, obviously. And it's the score on the scoreboard is 10 to nothing. It was 110 to 100 at that point in time. So Ronnie, we're getting ready to shoot the foul shot. Ronnie goes, "What are we going to do?" I looked at him and says, "What are we going to do? We're going to keep reffing. That's all we can do." That was crazy. I mean, it was unbelievable. And then the other one was Mark Henry was involved in this one. This was the coaches were Steve Kamak and Jimmy Myers Jr. It was Norwood at Potsdam. 3 overtimes in the Potsdam gym. It must have been about 120 by the time we got done. And Henry was only a freshman, and I can still see him. He takes a shot. He's got the ball down around his waist, and he lets it fly. In it goes. Buzzer. Norwood wins. I think that was the winning. I think they won by, it wasn't a 3-pointer. I think they won by 2. But Brian and I, that's another one. You crawled into what's her name? Sarah Fiacco's office in Potsdam. Just sit there for about 10 minutes looking at each other like, did we survive this or not? Then to top it all off, of course, Steve Kamak he wants to talk to us. Oh, no, I'm not in a mood to listen to him tonight. But anyway,
Yeah.
we open the door. What do you want? I want to come in. No. What do you want? He says, well, okay, I'm just going to tell you, I'm not going to scream and yell. He said, I just want to tell you, you guys did a hell of a job. He said, I'm thinking, I look at Brian looks, we go, oh my God.
What's the catch?
Yeah.
From K-Mac, that when to lose like he lost, we got a letter. We both got a, Doug Huntley was the superintendent at Messina for a lot of years. Brian and I both got a letter from Doug saying about what a great job we did that game with all the things that could have happened that didn't, because fortunately we were on top of things. It was those were two highlight. There were many others, obviously, but those were two highlight games that happened.
Rick, we've talked to other people on this show. And we've discussed well, what would be my old days, which would be back in the 70s and 80s, and playing the small gyms like St. Rita's Falls and back in the old Chateauguay gym. And
Yep.
now the discussion always came about wasn't as much what happened on the floor or what was leaking through in the corner on a garbage pail and
Up in the falls.
or the
Yeah.
dash lines around the edges where you to pass in. And anyway, basically the discussion was who survived up in the stands. It seemed like the people that were in the stands were having fist fights.
Oh,
You must have some stories about that.
I never had fights in the stands. I had situations where I would, some naturally was a guy in most cases, a man, a father would be out of control. Guy was just out of control. So I wouldn't go talk to him. I just go to the administrator and go talk to Joe Schmutz, just tell him that if he can't control himself, he's going to have to leave. I don't want to throw him out. I want him to watch the game. But if he can't behave, then he's going to have to leave. But I'm trying to think. Boy, something like that would jump out at me, but I don't remember. There was a lot of trouble in the parking lot after the game. I know that. You'd get outside and start throwing the punches and whatnot. You're hoping you weren't going to walk out there and there wasn't one waiting for you. But no, I didn't have those. You talk about those little. Okay, let's talk about Hammond, for example. 55-30. The Falls wasn't much bigger than that. Saranac Lake had a 5-cornered gym. Okay, Saranac Lake. One of the things was too short, so they had the end line and the sideline didn't intersect at a right angle. They came and they drew a little line, probably about 6 feet long, that connected them. So the corner wasn't full.
Yeah, it came.
And the people at Saranac Lake sat way up above, and it looked like it was an old pool. It wasn't, but they sat down and looked at the game. And one of the baskets was a glass basket, a glass backboard, so the people could see. And the other side was the other end was just the old time, just a wooden backboard. Those kinds of things. But let's get back to the hash marks. You got a court 55-30. So then you go to inbound the ball, and the dotted line, the hash mark, becomes the sideline or the end line.
Right.
So that meant that what happened was the kid that no one could be in that hash mark. If you were in that hash mark, let's say you had the offensive team was going to throw the ball in, and there was a guy 5 feet to his left, the offensive team couldn't be in there. If he was in there and they threw the ball to him, it was a violation. The other team got the ball back. So what you did was made a small court even smaller, trying to get it in bounds.
Right.
Those kinds of and those crazy over and back lines, you'd be especially well, Joey, you remember your gym had Brazier didn't have the double line in the old gym, did they?
Not in our, no, not in our old gym.
You should have had it because that gym was too short, you know,
Yeah.
because you didn't have 40 feet in the front court. You didn't
Right.
have it. Norwood, Norfolk, and Canton were built at exactly the same time your gym was built, and they had them, those double lines, you know.
Yep.
But here you, I'm telling you, you're out reffing out there, and there's those two lines, and there's shit going on, and the ball's being passed, and this guy diving, and you're going, what line is it now? Which way are we going here? I'm serious now. Think about it. You got about 5 things going on out there. Oh yeah, the double lines. How about in the quote unquote new Messina gym when they had the folding door right underneath the basket? Remember that big?
Oh yeah.
thing?
Oh, that
Yeah.
that thing caused so many problems. I saw so many injuries. Kids
Oh,
running into that thing.
listen, don't forget, Messina practiced in there all the time. You
Yeah.
can imagine what it was like. Of
Oh, I
course,
can.
that was a great advantage to Messina, especially when Jerry came in when you wanted to press, because if you got on one side of that door, remember you could run the end line, right? Remember you can run the end line on it. But if you ran the end line and got to the door and stepped around the door, you were on the floor and you lost the ball. Think about that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you had that well, I'll tell you, my son, Bobby, graduated in 87, and he, Noel Van Dusen's kid played. He was the president of the Board of Education, and he just said, we're getting rid of those doors. You don't need them anymore. The doors were there to split the gym because the boys and girls couldn't see each other when they were in the gym together. Remember those days? Okay. So they finally took them out of there. It was into the 90s before they took them out of there. Anyway, got rid of those doors. But there was all kinds of Chateauguay. Mike Eggleston. Of course, Mike was a hockey player. Ricky Martin, there's a name from the past. Ricky Martin talked him into refereeing basketball. So what's the first assignment he has? Parishville, of course, Parishville struggles in basketball. Some goes Parishville at Chateauguay in that little gym with Ricky Martin and I. Poor Mike. I mean, imagine you've never done a basketball game in a full gym and the place was going, people were screaming at him. There's this little old lady sitting on the bottom of the thing. She's got her cane with her. She whacked Eggleston. Seriously, she whacked him right in the ankle one time. Says, "You'd better wake up out there." Hit him right in the ankle. Mike's limping along. Well, Peter, did you play when Salmon River had the big German kid that came in for the year, the exchange student? No. Kevin Walbridge was coaching.
Yeah, no, that would have been Patrick. That was after Paul and I.
Okay.
So that would have been
that
would have been Patrick's era.
I probably played against them. Probably Russ was on that team. David's brother, Russ Bartlett, was probably on that team.
Yeah.
Would be.
Yeah.
Seems to me like I recall something about that, but
the big German kid, he came in. It wasn't a Bill Plant. He didn't make any phone calls to get him to come over.
He stayed with the Russells.
But anyway, Jimmy Myers and I again. The guy that ran the clock in Chateauguay, I don't want to be disrespectful to him, but everybody called him Lurch. Do you remember him? Remember Lurch?
I do.
The Adams family. You know the big guy, the big long face.
Yep.
Well, he ran the clock, and of course, Hollingshead's wife kept score. And it's Salmon at Chateauguay, of course, you know. Chateauguay beaten Salmon 77 times in a row or something like that. But anyway, Kevin's got him. He's got him. He's up by 1. Salmon's up by 1 with, pick a number, 2 seconds left, maybe. 1, I don't know. It's in the old gym, so the clock didn't. So Chateaugay's got to go the length of the floor and try and score to win, tie it or win it, one or the other. So I'm lead, Jimmy's trail. Jimmy's coming down the side right in front of the scorer's table where he can get open. And of course, in Chateauguay, as soon as we dressed in the back hallway down there. So, ball comes in, pass, dribble, still no horn. I look up at the clock. I said, there's still 2 seconds on the clock. He didn't start it. So I look up. Jimmy looks up. Jimmy stops right at midcourt, waves his arms like this. I can hear him scream, "This game is over." Boom! He goes out. He sprints out the door.
Oh,
All right, now it gets better. So I'm at the opposite end, way down in the corner where the visiting teams used to dress in Chattagauge. Remember the girls' locker
Yep.
room? You came out?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. I'm down there. I got to go across the floor, through the table, past Hollingshead to get in. Well, they want a piece of me like you wouldn't believe, right? They're ready to kill me. Okay, I didn't say the game was over. I would have, but they're screaming and they're yelling and they're, oh Jesus, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So finally I get out. I get down to the room. Jimmy's sitting there with that little smiley grin he's got. He goes, "Where you been, partner?" I said, "Where have I been?" He said, "I'll tell you what, I'll send you out there and let you find out where I've been." No. He says, "I'm not going anywhere."
Yeah.
Well, I can see that. Didn't start the clock, honest to God. I think I'll tell you who played in that game was Chris Reynolds, Chattagay. Coaching there.
Yep.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure Chris played in that game because we talked about it several times. Chris smiles. He says, "Oh yeah, I knew he didn't start the clock." Oh jeez, honest to God. Mrs. Holling said she was beside herself. Oh, how could you do this?
Yeah, that would have been my brother Patrick's era. So yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Kevin, the big kid from Germany, big tall kid. I mean, he was about 6'7", 6'8", and he could play.
Yep.
He wasn't a goon. He could do some things out there. That was.
I actually worked with him a little bit.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He was I think he had trouble with cigarettes. He got in trouble with cigarettes one time. I mean, he got suspended for a couple of games or something. Poor Kevin. He drove him nuts anyway. He had Kevin talking to himself after a while.
Well, Rick, it's been brought up plenty on this show, probably more than any other sport, is we talk Section 10 basketball. And, we've talked about the Friday night, because back in those days, the JV game didn't tip until 6:30.
6:30.
And the boys were always Friday night.
Right.
We didn't have that little exchange with the girls where we split it. The boys were Friday night games.
Mm-hmm.
And, Pete and Dave and I, with many other guys on this show, have discussed the fact that, you went to St. Regis Falls on a Friday night with a varsity game that didn't tip until 8:15.
Mm-hmm.
There was a decent chance that 75% of that crowd was 3 sheets to the wind already.
Before it started.
Yeah. Before.
And they had the halftime break, right?
Yeah. And God knows what was going to happen at the end of the game, where they were, because they all were heading to the local establishment after the end of the game. So,
oh, yeah. Either
but
down
the one thing that you made me think about that Pete and Dave and I have never talked about with the rest of these guys is really now with all our new gyms, it's not that much of a home court advantage. We're all playing on 94/5. Most of them are now Chattagay's gym, my gym, Herman's gym.
Mm-hmm.
You think back to the old days, I now think of my gym. My gym was not conducive to all the rest of the gyms that we played in. We didn't have a restraining line.
Yeah.
We didn't have 2 sets of half court lines.
Yeah.
It was such a home court advantage in those old gyms.
Oh, there's no question.
Yeah, because
And everybody was right on top of the floor.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Think about where they were. I mean, people's feet were on the court that sat on the bottom row.
Yeah.
You say move your feet. Why?
Yeah.
You're in play.
Yeah. Joey, big kid, played football at St. Lawrence, was a basketball player for you. I don't think Joe had him.
Bill Jones.
No, not Billy Jones. No.
No.
This was a big guy. He played against Dar Kelly from the Falls. They were remember Dar? You know Dar?
Oh,
about
God,
the same
Dar
size.
should be on this show. That would be a great. Dar banged with
Dave played against him.
Dar and I we've talked, late recently and just sort of reminisced.
Well, Dar and oh God, the kid played football at St. Lawrence. I can't, the big kid. He and Dar were the same size. I mean, just huge. So Wilbur is coaching the Falls, and Joe's got St. Lawrence Central. So these guys are all over each other all night long. You're trying to let them play, and blah, 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 blah. Talk to them. Come on, boys. Come on, boys. Finally, they get tangled up. And it looked like a WWF or UFC kickboxing or whether. They go down together, and they're in a big, huge pile. I blow the whistle. I said, both of you go sit down. So I get the coaches. I get them together. I says, I'm telling you right now, those guys go sit. I'll tell you when they both can come back in. What? I said, you heard me. The other option is I don't sit them down. I throw them out.
No.
And you're going to lose them for this game, and you're going to lose them for the next game. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So they came back and they were right. I cannot think of the kid. He was
it Steve Russell? Steve Russell?
No, it wasn't Steve. I know Steve. This kid played football at St. Lawrence for 4 years. He was
because I'm trying to think back in the Dar Kelly days. Jeff Truax would have played in those days, but he wasn't known for.
Jeff wasn't going to tangle with Dar Kelly.
No.
Jeff's smarter than that. Anyway,
I don't know about that.
That's again. It's,
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going there. Not going there. Dar Kelly. I can remember those guys in that pile, and they looked like two octopuses down there. They were just smacking and banging each other. Ronnie John. I had that game with Ronnie Johnson. So Ronnie Johnson says, "What'd you do?" I came walking. He went and sat down. So I told him what I did. He goes, "That's a pretty good choice." So they came back in, and they were, as good as those two could be, because neither one of them were basketball players. Dar was just, I'm big. I'm going to knock somebody on their tush and that kind of stuff. Got a Bissell story for you.
Oh, good.
Glenn Bissell. Okay, set the scene. The old gym in the Falls. Brushton at the Falls. Do I have to say anything more about the rivalry? Okay. So, of course, the place is beyond packed. The coaches are St. Regis Falls, Donnie Parks, Brushton, Bob Genoway. Referees are Bissell and Gene Dow. Remember Gene from Chateauguay or not? I don't know.
Yep.
But Parksy's brother Ira's running the clock. Okay. Got one second left in the game. Brushton's down 1. Brushton's got to go the length of the floor, which isn't too far, but they still got to go from one end to the other. So Biss and Dow, while there's a timeout, Biss says, okay. He says to Gene, he says, I'll take the ball. You watch the clock. Make sure Ira doesn't start it too soon. All right. In comes the ball. Brushton comes down the floor. Whatever happened to the clock, it didn't start. Okay. Instead of Ira starting it too soon, he didn't start it soon enough. Kid from the Brushton lets it go. Then the buzzer goes off. Bang, in it goes. Brushton wins by 1. Place is bedlam, absolute bedlam. Well, in those days in the Falls, you had to go from the new gym downstairs to, I called it the catacombs. You had to go through the catacombs all the way over to the underneath the old gym and into the girls' office. So Biss and Dow get down there. So they're in there about a minute and a half. Boom, 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 boom. Who is it? Parksy, I want to talk to you. So Biss says, are you coming in, friend or foe? This is Bissell telling the story. He goes, I'm coming in as a friend, but I'm not happy. Okay. So they open the door. He goes, Biss. You see Parksy practically crying. Biss. The clock, he didn't start the clock. That shot should have never gone up. Piss. Donnie looks to Piss. He says, what am I going to tell my kids? What am I going to tell them? Can you now think of Biss the way he was? He looks at him. He says, tell him you got screwed. Is he doing that today, Chris? You'd be lying to the superintendent. Norman, you'd be in Norman's office on Monday morning. Getting lined up. Yeah. You know,
Well,
Joey,
Rick,
I got one other thing. Getting back to your thing about not playing on Friday nights anymore. And of course, that's all Title IX, right? Which I don't have a problem with Title IX.
Yep.
And Mary Arcady was at Messina, and she just said, it's not fair that we got to play on 2 school nights. And the boys have Friday night, and that's the best night. So that's when they went to splitting the schedule. And of course, what it did was nobody went to girls on Friday nights anyway, unless it was Messina Malone or something like that, then you'd get a big crowd. Other than that, they just blew it off. And it kind of hurt basketball in that situation. But there's fair.
Yes, I get that. And we actually are even getting more progressive this year for the first time ever. Usually the girls get Tuesday, Friday at the first half of the season, and the boys get it the second half. This year we're going the other way. The boys are going to be Monday, Thursdays in the second half of the season, which will be totally new for me, because now usually by the time January rolls around, I don't have games on Monday. I can give the kids the weekend off. Well, now I'm going to have games on Monday in January and February. We're going to have to practice on Saturday or Sunday. Right. They're not going to like that, but
yeah,
it is what it is. So.
The other thing, and they'd never do it, I'm going to use the S word, Saturday, is you would play Tuesday, Friday, Wednesday, Saturday. That way you'd only have one school night that you're out.
Right.
Even if you're playing at home, the kids still aren't home, and say they're going to study, but they should be home.
Right.
Some of those kids, they leave school, they leave at 6:30 in the morning, and they don't get home till midnight sometimes. Then they got to get up at 6 o'clock and go to school again. But they never do it. So that's what I like about the Frontier League, and even over in Plattsburgh, they play a lot of Saturday games. Parents can get there a lot easier, but it'll never sell in Section 10. Never.
No, because a lot of the coaches don't want to be working on the weekends.
And administrators say, I don't want to work 6 days a week.
Yeah. Because then somebody's got to be there to be in charge and all that stuff. Yep. You're right. I deal with it all the time. So I know.
Yeah, I was the other way. When I was at Holy Family, I loved Saturday night games and even Sunday games. Sundays, because it was the NFL isn't like it is now, but Sunday games were great. Families really on Sunday, you go to church, then you went to play basketball. It was fun. It was fun. And the kids.
Rick,
okay, go ahead. I'll shut up.
Yeah, well, we got to start winding this down because we're pushing an hour here, which has been an unbelievable hour, by the way, to hear some of these stories. But I just want to finish up because you mentioned just a few minutes ago, the Bissell story, and you couldn't say that nowadays. And the one thing I wanted to say, and this has been brought up before, and Dave and Pete have heard me say this, but in our day, and I hate giving the our day stories, but in our day, the referees were all personalities.
Right.
Every single one of you had a personality of your own that was built to handle exactly what we've been talking about for the last 45 minutes. Those Friday night games in Chateaugay where you knew it was going to be a zoo. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we have that anymore. And I don't know what you think or where you think it's going, but I know we're struggling for officials, and it's not just getting officials now; it's getting officials with personalities that can handle a coach and handle a game the way you guys did. Whether you were right or wrong, you handled the game, and managed the game. And I'm worried about where that's going. Not just in basketball, but in all sports.
Yeah. You're perfectly correct. I think we have the basketball side, boys, I think we've got some really good young officials, some really good ones, but not enough of them.
Right.
Basically, that's the problem. There's maybe 10 people that people want them to work their games, and the rest of them they don't want. You can't have it that way, Yeah. And the younger ones who aren't strong have to develop. They've just got to come along,
Right.
Lucky, you got to get Tommy Lucky on. I'm sure he could. You got to try and get Tommy on sometime.
We had him.
Oh, you did? Oh, good.
Yes, we did have Tommy.
I'm sure that had to be good.
It was.
If you want to talk, another guy would be Tommy McCauley with the baseball softball about trying to assign officials. And of course, Tommy's an assigner too.
Right. And that's not easy. I know that.
Oh man. Oh, just soccer. You look at soccer. You got how many? Some nights they got 30 games, scheduled 30 games, and then
Yeah.
they moved two more. They moved two into that. Now I got 32. I don't have any officials. Just don't have them. Yeah. Well, thanks, guys. Thanks for talking to me and let me tell you my life story here.
Rick, it's been an honor. Really has. There will never be another Rick Ahlfeld. I'll tell you that in Section 10.
I hope not.
They broke the mold, man. But we could always knew we were going to get, like Joey said, we were going to get a one good night of officiating.
Thank you.
Came in. So
I
we really appreciate
that. Okay, boys. Be
Rick,
good.
You know what, Rick? I'm gonna tell you what. I think we could do this probably 2-3 hours with you. I'll be honest with you, and we're. I'm gonna speak for the other two. We're gonna invite you back on again if that's okay with you.
Oh yeah, no problem. No problem. I'm going to Florida, but I can do it from down there too.
Well, I am too. In about 3 weeks, I'm headed down.
I'm not going till after the new year, but I want warm weather, golf, and be able to go for a walk at 8 o'clock at night and not freeze.
That's right. Yeah. Well, Rick, thanks a lot for coming on our show. We appreciate it.
Be good. Take it easy. Bye.
That's going to be it here for ESS Empire State Sports and the Wise Guys Sports Talk Show. For Joey Riom, Dave Bartlett, and myself, Pete Ghost, our very special guest, Rick Ahlfeld. Good night, everybody. Stay safe.
I just came back. I hit the X sign and I popped up.
Well, you made it, Rick. That's all. You made it through the night.
Okay.
Good way to end.
Take it easy, guys.
All right. Good night.
Good night.